Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to this webinar on behalf of TEFL.org. My name is Carl. I'm a teacher trainer for TEFL.org. I work here in Northern Ireland, where I train people how to become EFL teachers. And we do live weekly webinars on a whole range of topics and this is one of them. The topic of today's webinar is 5 myths about teaching abroad debunked. So I'm going to be talking a bit about this and sort of some of the rumors you might have heard about EFL, and I'm going to tell you whether they're true or whether they are false or not. So before I get started, I'd just like to know where you are in the world. As I said, I'm here in Northern Ireland. I work as a teacher trainer. I work as an online teacher. I work as an English examiner as well. I've also worked face-to-face in lots of different places around the world. I still do some face-to-face work here in Ireland. I've worked in China, I've worked in Japan, Vietnam, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan. I worked in Iraq, Spain, and Italy. So a few different places. I can see people saying hello. It's always good to know where people are. And I'd also like it if you could put in the chat what you think I might be talking about with some of the myths today. So something you might have heard about EFL teaching that you're not sure whether it's true or if you're not sure whether it's false. And hopefully I can answer it, or if not, Alan, who's monitoring the chat, who's also an EFL teacher, he can get in there and put some comments in as well. So do say hello and let us know where you are in the world. Right, so let's get started on this presentation. Sorry, I should say this is live. So if you've got any questions as well about anything I'm talking about or anything about EFL teaching, put that in the chat and I will get to those after I've finished this PowerPoint. Right. Okay. So 5 myths about teaching abroad debunked. So the first one, before I get talking about the myths, I want to talk a bit about why I think you should teach abroad. It's been a fantastic experience for me. I taught abroad for about 10 years, maybe sort of a bit more than that, maybe 12, 13, in a range of different countries, as I said, and I loved it. Absolutely, absolutely loved it. But I now work as an EFL professional in a range of different things here in Northern Ireland. But I hope eventually, once my family have grown up a bit, to be able to go and teach abroad again. So I just want to talk a bit about why I think you should sort of teach abroad. So first of all, it's a great way to travel. When I got into EFL teaching in the early 2000s, I did it just to travel. I didn't have some great big urge to become a teacher. I just wanted to see the world, and I did a bit of web searching, and I realized that EFL teaching was a great way to do it. And it absolutely was. It's totally true. It got me to many, many countries and places within countries around the world. So it's a really great way to travel. You will meet fantastic colleagues and you'll meet fantastic students. I think this is something that you need to sort of think of as a bonus. So don't just think of it about travel, think about the people that you'd meet as well. Some of the students I met were absolutely fantastic. They looked after me. They were friendly. They were great. They showed me around their towns, around their countries. It was brilliant. And I made some really, really good friends as well in the colleagues I worked with. There are lots of opportunities to be part of a local culture. I've traveled a lot when not been an EFL teacher. And, sometimes you do sort of struggle to become part of the local community, part of the local culture. When you sort of fly in for like a week or 2 weeks or somewhere, you see all these sort of tourist destinations. Whereas if you go there and you teach abroad, the students, the local colleagues will explain to you parts of the local culture. They will show you parts of the local culture that you might not see if you just go in purely as a tourist. But there are many misconceptions, I think, about EFL teaching, things that I've heard, especially since I've become a teacher trainer. People have sent me emails, people have sent me messages on LinkedIn asking me if this is true, if that's true. And there are some misconceptions which I do want to talk about today. Before I get to the first one, hello to everyone. Hi, Charles. Hi, David. Hi, LinkedIn user in Minneapolis. Hi, Supana, who's in Calcutta, India. Hi, Sean, who's in Liverpool. And Sean's got his first question in as well. I will get through to that question, Sean. I love that question you've asked. Right. So first myth, you need to be a native speaker. So we hear this a lot. Oh, I can't become an EFL teacher because I'm not a native speaker. And I've done webinars where I talk purely for almost an hour just on this topic. But the first thing I would say is that English is a global language. The majority of communication between people in English are actually between people who don't have the English as their first language. So, for example, you might have a Chinese person talking to a Korean person. Sometimes they will communicate in English. You might get a Brazilian person trying to sell their products to India, and they will talk to each other in English, okay? Even though English is widely spoken in India, that the person from India might not have English as their first language. English is truly a global language. And sometimes you will see the odd advertisement for people who want to, for example, sell their products into India, and they might want an Indian English teacher in order to help them with the English pronunciation that's used in India. So there are different opportunities, but English is definitely a global language. Now, the majority of lessons around the world are actually taught by non-native speakers. Now, when you become an EFL teacher, you might find that you see lots of adverts and they sort of ask for native speakers. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But what you need to think about is that actually the majority of people that learn English, they're actually learning from someone in their own country whose second language is English. So, for example, when I lived in Japan, I had a role where I helped to teach or train Japanese people to teach English better. But the Japanese teacher was in a Japanese high school teaching English to students. So, and that is how the majority of people's first experience of learning English, good or bad, is. That's what their first is. So the majority of English lessons are taught by non-native speakers. And so there are opportunities there to go and work abroad and work in schools. More than being a native speaker, certification is key. So having the right certificates, having the right qualifications can get your foot more into the door than if you are a native or a non-native speaker. So if you've got good qualifications, and I know this from recruiting people as a senior teacher, as a director of studies of language schools, if I've got two people, I don't really care about their level of English so much or whether their first language is English. What I really care is about what level of qualification they have. To me, someone who was recruiting, that shows a lot more commitment to teaching English. It shows that they will be a better teacher than whether their first language is English or their first language is Portuguese, whatever it might be. Now, what I would say is when you see an advert, if you feel like you're not a native speaker and you see an advert and it says native speakers only, say to yourself, what is a native speaker? Is a native speaker someone whose English is a first language? They grew up speaking English in their home. Now, I know people, friends of mine, whose English isn't very easy to understand, who make lots of grammar mistakes when they speak, and English is their only language. There's different pronunciations around the world in places like America, Canada, Australia, the UK, Ireland, South Africa, where English is the first language, but maybe their pronunciation isn't very clear to students. So if you see a job and you want that job, email the company and say, look, English isn't my first language, but I have an IELTS certificate showing that I'm advanced level. I have a Trinity English level to show that I'm C1, C2 level. Does that count as a native speaker? All right. Now, the issue quite often is with work visas. So unfortunately, I believe countries around the world, and a lot of these are in Asia, they say that in order to get a work visa, you must come from a certain country. And unfortunately, some of these countries are English-speaking countries. So when a school advertises on a website and says native speakers, it might not be because they think a native speaker teacher is better than a non-native speaking teacher. It's because, unfortunately, their government says that they can only hire people from these countries. And that is what the issue is. And you'll see that if you go and watch some of my other webinars, there are lots of opportunities around for non-native speaking teachers. So go and watch one of my webinars. Type into YouTube, TEFL.org, native speakers. You'll find lots of webinars where I talk about this and give you more information about it. You'll get rich. Yeah, I'm super rich here in my house, multi-millionaire. I just work for fun. I don't work for money anymore. I just work for the love of it. I've heard this before. People saying you'll get rich. Now, can you define rich? So I've worked in some quite poor countries where there's quite a good level of a bad level of poverty. Sorry, is a better word. And I was in that country quite rich. However, my wage there compared to what I earn now in the UK was a lot lower. So what is rich? Now, and you watching this, you might come from a country where the minimum wage is, let's say, $15, $20 an hour. Or you might come from a country where people earn sort of $3 or $4, $5 an hour. And you'll see jobs advertised with quite low wage. And why would people want to work there? But actually, for some people, that's quite a good level of wage. So defining rich is quite difficult. What I would say is you will always, as an EFL teacher abroad, be comfortable with the wage. I have never, in all the countries I've worked in, not had money left at the end of the month. Okay. Salaries vary widely across the globe. If you want to earn money, go to the oil producing countries. They tend to pay the most wage and they tend to pay less taxes, that kind of thing. You can save more money. But that salary is obviously going to be a lot higher than working in somewhere like South Asia, some parts of Southeast Asia. Salaries do vary very widely, but so does the cost of living. You might see a huge salary advertised in a place like Singapore. Singapore is quite expensive to live in. Dubai can be quite expensive to live in. So, it's all relevant, really, how much money you'll get. You will always be comfortable. I really don't know any EFL teacher who doesn't, apart from ones that maybe live beyond their means, who wasn't comfortable. You will always be comfortable. And many jobs come with perks abroad. So you'll see things like free flights. You'll see things like free accommodation or discounted accommodation. You'll see aspects such as health insurance, that kind of thing. Your lifestyle will dictate your wealth. My wife worked in Mexico and she earned, this was about 25 years ago before I met her, I think she earned about $400 a month. And she said that she quite happily at the end of the month ended up with about $300 left at the end of the month. This is one of her first EFL teachers jobs. It was a long time ago. That, to me, $400 now sounds like very little, but she didn't spend her money. Whereas me, when I was abroad, I used to spend as much as it came in quite often. I'd be out going to nice restaurants. I'd be out spending a lot of money on alcohol, this kind of thing. So your lifestyle will totally dictate your wealth. It's a long vacation. I still hear this from my parents about my time abroad. They say to me, oh, you went for, you had that sort of 10, 15 years where you were on holiday, ha ha. And they sort of put the ha ha in like they're sort of joking, but actually, I actually don't think they feel they are joking. It's not just a holiday being an EFL teacher. You will be educating people who need to learn English. So I've had jobs abroad where people need a certificate in order to get a better job, in order to go abroad, in order to start a university course. These aspects are really, really important to them. And they were looking to me to get them through that certificate in order to improve their life for them and their family. And if I sort of swanned in after 5 minutes after being on the beach in my flip-flops, that kind of thing, it wouldn't go down very well. Some of the jobs are quite important for the students. The courses are quite important for the students. So that means they've got to be quite important to you. There can be a lot of work beyond the classroom. Things like marking, things like creating materials. Some of this can be quite hardcore to do. Okay. University courses, you mark quite a lot of essays. This takes a lot of time. Exam English classes are similar as well. So there can be a lot of work. And there can be many challenges living abroad. Things like learning a new language. I'm going to talk about that in a second, more about the language. But, getting into a new culture, finding places to live, being homesick, having a new group of students to teach that you've never taught before. There can be many challenges, and this can be quite difficult for people, especially at the start of their EFL teaching abroad life. So just be careful and know that it's not just if you see a contract for 20 hours that you're just going to be there for 20 hours. All right. Make sure that you know that it's not going to be a long holiday. All right. I'm not saying you can't go on holiday. I can't say that the weekends you can't go to the beach, but Monday to Friday when you're working, it can be a bit tricky. The downtime is fantastic in the places that I've lived in, and if you like to party, there's that. If you like to sort of be cultural and just see places, there's that. If you want to get away, when I lived in Vietnam, we got away quite a lot for half terms and holidays, that kind of thing. It was fantastic. So it swings and roundabouts, but when you're actually in the school, when you're working, it can be quite tricky. Something that I've got, but how did you go to there when you didn't speak the local language? Surely you need to speak the local language. Now, many schools that employ people don't actually want people who can speak the local language. It's not good for them. The schools don't really want you in the classroom speaking Vietnamese if you're in Vietnam. They don't want you in the classroom speaking Russian if you're in Russia, whatever it might be. And the reason is because they want English immersion. They want a teacher that comes in there and speaks nothing but English to the students. So, all the commands are in English. If there's a vocabulary word that there's tricky with, you're writing on the board in English, all this kind of thing. Now, many, many years ago, it was seen that it was English only, that really there should be nothing at all in the classroom that wasn't in English. Some people have sort of eased down that law a little bit. They sort of every now and again they'll throw in a bit of a translation if they feel like it would help. But on the whole, there should be a lot of English in the classroom. The teacher's talking time should pretty much all be in English. And the only way that knowing the local language comes in is to help you settle in. So in Vietnam, I tried to learn Vietnamese. I found it very, very tricky. And the only thing I learned was how to command a taxi, left or right, straight on, because that was like a survival English for me. Everything else, so it's survival Vietnamese for me. Everything else, I didn't really need Vietnamese for. But knowing the local language can definitely help you settle in. It helped me a lot in Japan. But nowadays, sort of technology can help with that. When I lived in Vietnam, didn't really have a phone that was connected to the internet all the time. I didn't get much data, that kind of thing. I can't remember having an online dictionary. There was none of this. You talk into it and it translates it. Nowadays, there is a lot of that, and that can help you a lot to get around the world. Teaching abroad is for young people. I've had in my teacher training courses here in Belfast, I've had people that of sort of in their 50s and sort of approaching their 60s, and they've come because they want to teach English in Belfast. And when they've got through the course, they didn't sort of realize that they could actually go abroad and teach. It's not true that teaching abroad is for young people. Many countries prefer older professionals, especially in places like the Middle East. You get a lot more respect if you're older. You have a lot more gravitas to what you say when you're older. And companies, sometimes in some parts of the world, they'll never say this out loud, but if they've got two people with exactly the same qualifications, same levels of experience, they might choose the older person, okay, because they feel like it's a safer bet as a person. And you can bring a lot of experience to the classroom from outside, from your work as in business, for example, from your life experience of living all different parts around the world. So you can definitely bring a lot of experience into classroom, and this can help you get a job. If you're going for a school which teaches business English, for example, they have business English courses, and they can see that you have experience working in businesses, even running businesses, being managers, that they will like that. This will definitely help you to get a job. Students definitely respect older people. I have worked in places where I've co-taught with another teacher. So like, for example, I do 3 days and then the other teacher does 2 days. And at the start of my teaching life, I would have the same class. So I'd do my 3 days of the class and they were teenagers, for example, and they were running rings all over me. It was an absolute nightmare. And I would say to the other teacher, oh, wow, aren't they a tricky class? And they go, actually, no, not really. I didn't find they were at all. I was like, oh, well, what do you use to sort of punish them? They do the same thing as me. Or they said, well, we hardly ever need to use that. And it could just be because they were a bit older. The students tend to respect older people. But some countries have visa upper age limits. So if you are, the Middle East tends to not have this. Europe doesn't have this. Some parts of South and Central America don't have this. But in Asia, some countries, and I'm talking sort of Thailand, sorry, I'm talking China and I'm talking South Korea in particular, they have upper age limits. So you can't get a visa to enter the country as a worker if you're sort of 60 or 65. And this is where sometimes it comes from it. But there are, and again, I've done webinars where I just talk about this, there are opportunities around the world for you to teach if you are even older than that. Thank you for some of these questions and points. I can see them. They're really good. I'm going to get to them in a minute. You can see I'm at number 5. Now, I said there were 5 myths. Here's a bonus myth for you because I'm feeling great and happy today because the sun is shining in Northern Ireland. You need a degree. I've heard this said to me a lot, but you need a degree to teach. To be an EFL teacher, you do not need a degree. My first EFL jobs came before I had a degree. And, you know, they were when I was quite newly qualified, but I feel like I did quite a good job there. You do not need a degree to be an EFL teacher. And something like a TEFL org training course gives you everything you need. So if you don't have a degree, if you're not trained up yet, go to TEFL.org, have a look at some of our courses. You'll see one there that's a 120-hour course. That is the bare minimum you need that will get you into being an EFL teacher. All right. But some disciplines within EFL want you to have a degree. And the most obvious one of this is English for academic purposes. This is where you go into a university and you teach academic English to people. So you would teach things like how to take a source from a book, put it on a paper, put it in your essay, you know, the academic conventions that go along with it. And universities and schools around the world that teach courses like this would want you to have a degree. Now, but if you go teach children, if you go teach general English, business English, you know, you don't need a degree for it. You need the 120-hour TEFL course. But some countries, a bit like the age thing that I spoke about on slide number 5 here, some countries do require a degree for the work visa. So when you see people say, if you see jobs advertised, it says you need a degree, not because they think that a degree makes you a better teacher. It's because the country that they are based in will only allow people in on a work visa if they have a degree. And that is why you might see jobs advertised saying degree needed. Okay. Nothing to do with the quality of the teacher. It's to do with the administration that comes alongside it. Right. So just a little bit of conclusion. There is a lot of misinformation online. There are a lot of YouTube channels where people talk about EFL teaching. And some of those teachers have lots of likes. They have lots of followers. And I listen to them as someone that's been into EFL for sort of 25 years. And I think, whoa, that's just not true. They're sort of trying to be a bit sensationalist. And they're trying to sort of get comments underneath. And sort of people do follow that on. And I have some of the people that I've trained up, they have sort of said to me after 6 months, oh, I haven't got a job yet. And it's because I don't have a degree, or it's because I'm too old, or something like that. And it's just not true. What is what is true is that TEFL is very similar to many other jobs. So it's not you've got this certificate and companies are going to fall over you to give you work. Okay, they're going to fall over each other, sorry, to give you work. It's not like that. You need to have a good training course. And there are lots of EFL, teaching EFL providers out there. We are not the only one. You will find other companies out there. And what I would say is that some of them are better quality than others. So be very aware of that. And when I was recruiting, if I had an EFL teacher and they did their training with a company I'd never heard of, I would Google that training company to see if I think they're good. And if I looked at what they taught the trainees, looked at their accreditation, it wasn't very good, I didn't give them the job, the person. Okay, so you do need to have good training. You also need to have good application skills, and AI can really help you with this. But you need to be able to interview well, and I've done webinars about this. You need to apply well through your CV, through your job application, through your cover letters. All this kind of thing is important and needed. Again, I've done webinars where I talk about this. Just email them saying I've got 120 hour TEFL certificate is not necessarily true. You do definitely need to have a positive attitude. You need to have a positive attitude in the classroom. You need to have a positive attitude in the interview. You need to have a positive attitude that you will find work, because there is work out there. You just need to keep going at it, and you just need to never give up. You also need to show a willingness to improve as a teacher. So, and this can come in different ways. It can come with, first of all, doing extra modules on top of your 120 hour certificate, but it can also be a willingness to improve in the classroom, trying new methods, trying new sort of ways of teaching. All this kind of thing can help. And if you put that in your application, you put that in your interview, you suggest that interview, it can help you. Focus on the positives that you're going to get out of EFL teaching, and the students, the travel, the learning new cultures, this kind of thing. Focus on that positive and don't just ignore any sort of headline grabbers. So if you see why you can't get a job unless you have a degree, don't apply unless you are a native speaker. This kind of thing. The headline grabbers, the negative Nigels, I call them, don't follow them. Think about the positives and go to YouTube channels that you might respect. I'm not saying this one is perfect at all, but there's good information on here. We interview lots of people that don't work for us in our podcast, and they tell you how it is. We have blog pages on our website. We've been doing this a while. We know the industry. Okay. Thank you. And I can see some lovely comments that I'm looking forward to getting to first. So let me go all the way back. Hello to everyone that said hello. Hi, Sean. Look at this. This is really good news. Hi from Liverpool. Is that a Stonehenge in the background as well? Have your picture? Great. You start your first contract in Guangzhou in China, lovely, in September. You're very excited. Any tips for living in China, Asia generally? Yeah. So my number one tip for China is smile. Okay. You're going to at times not have a clue what's going on. I lived in China for a good sort of year and a bit. You're going to be offered food that you've got no idea what it is. Have a go. Try it. Even if you think, oh, why would you eat that? Give it a go. Yeah, it's fun. It's nice. It's part of the experience. Smiling gets you really quite far in China. And I don't mean just, walking around like this, like but like if something goes wrong, you need a bit of help, give a bit of a smile. It can work. People speak more English in China than you expect. So they can help you out. If you're a bit lost, walk around to a few different people and say, help, can you help me please? And they might go, oh, no, because they're too shy. But you never know, you might find someone that does. And some of my best experiences in China was meeting like a local person and them taking me somewhere, or them saying, can you come, do you want to come with me to eat? Or do you want to come to do karaoke? Things like that was great. So just be open-minded, be willing to try new things, because It's very different from Liverpool, Guangzhou, but you will really, really like it, Sean, if you throw yourself into it. Okay. Be a bit trusting of people. That's the other thing I'll say. Maybe not around tourist destinations, but when you're walking around towns, when you're walking around cities, use your common sense, but sort of don't think that people are out to get you, because really they're not in Asia. They just want to sort of say hello and chat to you a bit. That's what I found, Sean. Okay. Sean, come back in Christmas time and tell us how you're getting on, because we would really like to hear that. Supana, hi. There you go. Supana learned English from teachers from her own race. Yeah, so that is part of the issue, is that some of the methods they use are old school, but that is definitely changing. In the sort of 20 odd years I've been teaching, I found that governments are employing more EFL high level experienced professionals to come in and sort of train the teachers instead of training instead of teaching the students. Okay. Still, a lot of the jobs are just straight on teaching students. 95% of the jobs are, but every now and again, you'll see jobs where you'll be a teacher trainer and a government will get in and they'll sort of hire 50, 60 people to come in and sort of go to different parts of the country and try and train their teachers. Parts of the JET program in China, for example, in Japan, are a bit like this. And they are fundamentally strong. They just need a bit of help to come up with some new methods. David says, if I want to stay rich, stay out of bars. Yeah, that's true. Probably true now as well. Yeah, interesting point. Yeah. So when you've worked abroad, so there's different ways of finding things. Volunteer groups are really, really good. You can get involved with different sort of classes. You could get involved with different groups, things like this. David, if you've got any advice on how to find them, that would be useful. Sports clubs are also good as well for finding for local people to help settle in. Supana, your question is if you have a degree, not English. Yes, it does. So my degree is in linguistics. It's not in pure English. But I have taught abroad with people who have degrees in business, in arts, in geography, in history, international relations, lots of different things. What matters is the length of time. So generally, it's either a 2 or 3 year degree. 3 tends to be in the magic numbers, but I know that out there are some 2 year degrees. Doesn't have to be in English at all. And some schools quite like people with like business degrees, for example. You really don't need to have a degree in English in order to be an EFL teacher. You just got to sort of have that piece of paper. David, yeah, TEFLers are either gushingly positive, sickeningly positive sometimes, or horrifyingly negative. Nothing in between. Yeah, but you know why? Because nobody clicks on a realistic, straight down the middle podcast or YouTube channel, do they? Yeah. What is my framework to select teaching job after you? So has this been after you've been qualified? So I've done webinars, Supana, where I talk about on this page, on this YouTube page, or on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you'll find them. You will find webinars where I talk about getting your first EFL job or your first job abroad. Worth watching. But basically, a bit of research. So first of all, seeing if you can find anything online about the school and the sort of classes they offer. In the interview, what I sort of say is apply to loads of different ones. Do the interview. If you get a good feel in the interview, if you've asking nice questions and they're giving you answers you like, that could be worth a lot. In terms of location, really sort of seeing where you fit in, where you feel like you want to go first of all, and then if you can find towns within that country or cities within that country and they're advertising, perfect, go for it. If it's your first teaching job, maybe sort of think a little bit outside the box. Like everybody, for example, in Spain wants to go teach in Barcelona and Madrid. But if you can, maybe go teach in somewhere like Valencia, somewhere like Malaga, beautiful cities, where you might get a bit of work. Okay. And it can just be a bit easier to find some jobs there. All right. Sean, thanks. Do come in for Christmas, and I'm sure it'll be a great trip. I'm a bit jealous. Marlena, hi. You've realized that just because you're a native speaker doesn't mean it'll be chosen for the job. Right. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a degree in teaching. Okay. So it's the whole load of things that come together. You know, the level of qualifications. If you have a bit of experience, you know, if someone who's not a native speaker can show that they've got a high level English certificate, then that maybe qualifies them as a native speaker. Yeah. And a degree in teaching, so that's like a degree in education, is quite different from a degree in other other topics. Yeah. So you hardly ever see people who have in the years that I've been recruiting who have a bachelor's degree in education. They tend to have a bachelor's degree in English. So they tend to have a bachelor's degree in maths or history, whatever it is. And then they'll do some extra teacher training course. In the UK, it's called a PGCE. It's called different things in different countries. That's more like a postgraduate certificate. So just don't think because you haven't got a degree in teaching that you're going to be against it. If you've got a degree in something else and you're a native speaker, or you can prove that you're a high level English speaker, then that is worth doing. Okay. I know you didn't ask a question, Marlene, but I hope I made my point. Charles says you have a maths degree. Perfect. That can definitely get you some work for sure. Yeah. David, thanks for getting back to me. For volunteer groups, most of the world, churches, temples, yes. Religion is a great way of getting into the local community, whether you believe or not. Okay. And contacting local Christian churches can really, really sort of help with things like that. It can also help you to find work in your own country, if that's the sort of thing that you're looking for. Okay. Yeah. And David's also added their community notice boards. Yes. Good for local groups. Orlando, hi. I'm just going to answer this question. And I think that could be the last one. I really do appreciate all these questions today. What are my thoughts on taking the CELTA? Right. So I have a CELTA. It's very intense. It's hard work for a month. Quite a few people failed it on my course. I don't know what the fail percentage is worldwide. If you get through it, you are very well prepared to be a teacher. But as I said, it can be expensive and it can be tricky. The expense is a lot compared to what you might get in your first year. So, you know, it can be sort of 10% of your wages for the first year that you spend on your CELTA. If you think that EFL teaching is for you long term, you know, you want this to be your life, I would recommend at some point doing a CELTA. I'm not saying it's the first thing you should do, but at some point it's worth doing. If, however, you just want to go abroad and you want to see how it is, you want to see if you like it, you want to see if EFL teaching is for you, or maybe you've just got sort of a couple of years that you want to just kill before you start like your career in whatever your degree might be in, for example, or whatever industry you want to get into, you do not need to do a CELTA. Something like 120-hour certificate, such as we offer, will get you work abroad. But if, as I said, so what I would always say is, what I always recommend is do your 120-hour certificate, do it for a year, do it for 2 years, teach, not the certificate for 2 years, teach for a couple of years, and then maybe do your CELTA if you love teaching, because it will help you longer term. You also might find that you go work for a school who will pay for you to do the CELTA. Okay. So quite often schools will say, okay, do you know what? We will pay for you, Orlando, to do the CELTA, but you've then got to stay with us for another year, another 2 years, whatever it might be. So that sort of thing might be worth thinking about. All right. But don't everybody rush out to get a CELTA. I think 120-hour certificate is perfect for starting off on your EFL journey. Thank you. I can't see any other questions, I don't think. And yeah, David, good point. It's a good idea to have some experience before doing a CELTA. That will definitely 100% help you for sure. Thank you, everyone. I hope that I have answered any myths or misconceptions you might have about EFL. If you're watching this live, thank you very much for tuning in your questions today. If you're watching this later on, please do put any questions in. I won't answer them live on the screen, but workers from TEFL.org will get in touch and will reply to your comments. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do say if you did enjoy it in the chat. If you didn't enjoy it, also say why, because we're always looking to improve. Big part of teaching is getting feedback. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.